In this video, we'll look at how to solve quadratic equation by factorization. So, factorization is not just a simple step. There are different scenarios and different ways to factorize different type of quadratic equation. So, there are cases where you can use the common factor method. There are cases where you just solve using the simple trinomial factorization. There are cases when you factorize by grouping, that is when your a is not equal to 1. We'll explain what that means. And there are cases where you just find the difference of square. And there are cases where you have like a perfect square trinomial, and everything have a specific way of solving it. And so the first thing you want to check is that you want to check if a certain condition is met, and once that condition is met, you use that method to solve it. So, for example, when do we use common factor method? If you look at the questions you have here, you notice that this is x squared and this is x. When you have questions like this, you take a look at your a. Is there a common factor that you can remove from this? Maybe you can divide this by 3. You can also divide this by 3. Right? So that means that if you look at the common factor between 3x squared and 6x, that will be 3x, because we can divide 3x squared by 3x, we can divide 6x by 3x. That way we have something like this: 3x, then you open a bracket. When you divide 3x squared by 3x, you have x. If you divide plus 6x by 3x, you have 2 equals 0. Now, what you did here is that you have removed the common factor. By doing that, you have factorized this equation. After factorizing this equation, one thing I want you to know is that if 3x multiplied by x plus 2 equals 0, this is only possible if one of two things happen. It's either 3x equals 0, so that whatever x plus 2 is, by the time you multiply it with 3x, you have 0. Or x plus 2 equals 0, which means that whatever 3x is, as far as x plus 2 is 0, when you multiply that with 3x, you still have 0. Now, if 3x equals 0, we can divide both sides by 3 so that x can stay alone, because 3 is the coefficient of x, so we divide it by 3 so that we can have x stay alone. Then 3 divided by 3, you have x. 0 divided by 3, you have 0. So x can be 0. Another thing is that here, this is a one-step equation. We can subtract 2 from both sides. Plus 2 minus 2 x is 0 minus 2 equals minus 2. So x is either 0 or x is minus 2. Now, we can do the same for this question right here. If we look at this, we can divide both sides by 5. We can divide both sides by x. This is 5x. That's the common factor. So 5x, open bracket. When you divide 5x squared by 5x, you have x. When you divide 25x by 5x, you have 5 equals 0. So again, we ask ourselves, for this to be 0, two things can happen for this to be 0. 5x can be equal 0, or x minus 5 can be equal 0. Then we say 5x equals 0, or x minus 5 equals 0. So divide both sides by 5, you have x equals 0. Or here we have plus, add 5 to both sides, x equals positive 5. So what if, if you look at this question, you notice that everything ends with a 0, like all of this equals 0. What if we have it the other way around? We have it something like this. The first thing you want to do is that you want to ensure that on one part there is 0. You understand? So for you to achieve this, all you have to do is add 6x to both sides. On this side, you have 9x squared plus 6x. On this side, you have negative 6x, positive 6x, that is 0. Now, you work with this equation. If you look at this equation, we can divide both sides by 3x. We can divide both sides by 3x. If we divide this and 6 and 9, they have a common factor of 3, and x appear in both, so 3x. So we can say 3x. Now, 9x squared, if we divide it by 3x, we are going to still have 3x plus 6x divided by 3x, that's 2, equals 0, which means 3x equals 0, or 3x plus 2 equals 0. Now you can divide both sides by 3 and you get x equals 0. Or you have to first subtract this by 2. So you have 3x equals negative 2. Then when you divide both sides by 3, you have x equals negative 2 over 3, can be written as negative 2 over 3 or negative 2 over 3. So x is either 0 or negative 2 over 3. Now, let's take a look at this question. We have 10x here, and we want to ensure that it moves here. For us to do that, we subtract 10x from both sides. So we have 2x squared minus 10x equals 0. Now, what is the common factor here? The common factor here is 2x. We can divide 2 by 2. We can divide 10 by 2. We can divide both sides, both 2x squared and negative 10x by x. So we have 2x. When you divide 2x squared by 2x, you have 2. When you divide, when you divide when you divide 2x squared by 2x, you have x. When you divide negative 10x by 2x, you have negative 5 equals 0. Now, which means that it's either 2x equals 0 or x minus 5 equals 0. So when you divide both sides by 2, you have x equals 0, or when you add 5 to both sides, you have x equals 5. Now, what if we don't have the question structured this way? What if we have the question like this? So in this question, the thing that we do is we try to look for, first of all, you have 3 terms here. You have x squared, you have x, and you have a constant. Now you are looking for things that when you add them together, you get the coefficient of x. And when you multiply it together, you get the constant. So what is that number that when you add it together, you get 5, and when you multiply it together, you get 6? You can see that that is 2 and 3, right? So what you will now do is that you can easily just say the whole of this is x plus 2 x plus 3 We are using plus because what we have here is 2 and 3, not 2 and negative 3 or negative 2 and 3. So if we have negative, we say x minus 3. Do you understand? So equals 0. Now that we have this expression, we know that it's either x plus 2 equals 0 or x plus 3 equals 0. Now, x plus 2, we can subtract 2 from both sides. So x equals negative 2, or we can subtract 3 from both sides. X equals negative 3. These are our answers. One thing you also notice is that if you try to multiply these numbers using binomial expansion, you will get this back. So x times x is x squared, x times 3 is 3x, 2 times x is 2x, 2 times 3 is 6. So by the time you simplify, by the time you collect the like terms, that's 2x plus 3x, you get 5x, and you're going to have this question back. Now, let's try the second question. We are looking for two numbers that when we add it together, it gives us negative 4. But when we multiply it, it gives us 3. Well, I can think of negative 3 and negative 1. Negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. Negative 3 plus negative 1 is negative 4. So I can say x minus 3, x minus 1 equals 0, which means it's either x minus 3 is 0, or x minus 1 is 0. Let me just say this again. Just imagine that x minus 3 is 0. Whatever x minus 1 is, you multiply it by 0, you get 0. And let's think, if x minus 1 is 0, whatever x minus 3 is, you multiply it with 0, you get 0. So that's why we always say that it's either x minus 3 is 0 or x minus 1 is 0. So for x minus 3 to be 0, we have to find x. What must x be? So add 3 to both sides. X equals positive 3. Or here you add 1 to both sides. X equals positive 1. Now, that is for a simple trinomial factorization. What if you notice in these questions, you don't have any number before x, which means that before x squared, which means that the coefficient of x squared is 1. You understand? That's 1x squared. That's why we can use this method. If we have a case where we have something like this, we apply what we call factorization by grouping. Factorization by grouping. How do we do this? The first thing we do is we take this coefficient of x squared, multiply it with the constant. 2 times 3, that will give us 6. Now, we are looking for a number that when we multiply those numbers together, we get 6. But when we add them together, we get 7. Coefficient of x. In this case, I can think of 6 and 1. If I multiply 6 and 1, I get 6. If I multiply, if I add 6 and 1, I get 7. So I'm going to split this 7x into 6x plus 1x. 6x plus 1x. So I have 2x squared plus 6x plus 1x plus 3 equals 0. Now, take a look at this part. We can have something like this. We can have something like this. It still means the same thing anyway. So one thing we want to do here is that we want to look for a common factor. You understand? We want to look for a common factor between these two. If you look at this, you notice that we can use 3 to divide 3. We can use 3 to divide this. Okay, you know what? Let me just do it this way. Look at 2x squared plus 6x. What is the common factor that we can use to divide this? We can use 2x. So if we have 2x, now 2x squared divided by 2x, that is x. 6x divided by 2x, that is 3. Plus, now for you to have x plus 3 in this bracket, since you already have x plus 1x plus 3 is same as x plus 3, so that means 1 times x plus 3 is still x plus 3. So we have x plus 3 equals 0. What we now do is we take these two numbers that are out of the bracket. We have 2x plus 1 and we have x plus 3 equals 0. Now, what is the rationale behind this? Remember that every time we want to do our expansion, what we have to do is we have to say 2x multiplied by everything in this bracket, multiplied by x and multiplied by 3. So 2x with this bracket x plus 3 is just telling us that 2x times x, 2x times plus 3. The same thing with 1 times x, 1 times x3. That's what this is telling us. So just like we do like a reverse operation just to get our factors. Now, what this means is that it's either 2x plus 1 equals 0 or x plus 3 equals 0. Now, here we subtract 1 from both sides. So you have 2x equals minus 1. And when you divide both sides by 2, 2 cancel 2. So you have negative 1 over 2. So x equals negative 1 over 2. Or we can subtract 3 from both sides. We have x equals negative 3. So x equals negative 1 over 2 or x equals negative 3. We have solved that. Now take a look at this question. We ask ourselves, what two number can we add together to get... Oh, sorry. We have to start by multiplying this and this together. When we multiply this, we get negative 36. Then we are looking for two numbers that when we multiply them, you get negative 36. And when you add them, you get 5. Now, you may begin to try out numbers. For example, if you look at 5 and 0, when you multiply them, it does not give you negative 36. And because we are going to negative, we can reduce this. This can be negative 1 and 6. That will be negative 6. 5 and negative 2. What am I saying? 7 and negative 2. That will be negative 14. If you have 8 and negative 3, that will be negative 24. If you have 9 and negative 4, that will be negative 36. And when you add this 9 and negative 4, it will add up to 5. So the number we're working with is 9 and negative 4. Which means that if we want to rewrite this, we can say 6x squared plus 9x minus 4x, this is the same as 5x anyway, minus 6 equals 0. Now, we are looking for what we can, the common value that we can extract. So, what we can do here is that I'm going to put a plus here, and I want this minus to be in the bracket. So we have 6x squared. we have 6x squared and we have 9x. We can divide both by x, that's 1. We can also divide both by 3. So we can divide both by 3x. When we divide both by 3x, we have this is 2x and this is plus 3. 2x plus 3. Now, if you look at this, this is negative, negative. You know that we can rewrite this as negative 1. Let me write it somewhere here because negative 1, then this will be 4x plus 6, right? Because if we say negative 1 times 4x, that will be negative 4x. Negative 1 times 6, that will be negative 6. So, now, if we are looking for the common factor here, negative is one of the things that is common. 2 is common, right? So, we can say negative 2. So, when you divide negative 4x by negative 2, you are going to have 2x. Minus, when you divide 6 by 2, you have 3. Now, since we divided it by negative 2, we have positive 3. So, now we have 3x minus 2. And we have 2x plus 3 equals 0. Which means it's either 3x minus 2 equals 0 or 2x plus 3 equals 0. Now, the next thing here is that we want to the next thing now is that we would subtract 2 from here. We'll add 2 to this, and then we have 3x equals positive 2, and also we divide by 3. So x equals 2 over 3. Can ignore the positive. So here we subtract both sides by 3. So we have 2x equals negative 3. Then divide that by 2. So we have x equals negative 3 over 2. Or you can write it as negative, then 3 over 2. It's all the same. So x is either 2 over 3 or negative 3 over 2. Now, difference of 2 square. Difference of 2 square. First, when you have difference of 2 square, let me explain this graphically. Let's say okay, good. Let's call this length right here A, and let's call this length B, such that let's call this length also A, and let's call this length B. No, that's not what I'm trying to do. Let's call the entire length A, this entire length A, but inside that a fraction of it is B, a fraction of this is also B. So if I say A square minus B square, you will notice that I can take this and place it on this, because now this is B square and we have removed it. So A square minus B square is going to give us this length, and this right here is the same as B, but this is also the same as B. So on this part we now have A minus B, on this part we have A plus B. So A square minus B square is same as A plus B times A minus B. So anytime you have question like this, just think of it this way. So if A square is x square, then A is x. If b square is 16, then b is 4. So the answer will be x plus 4 times x minus 4 equals 0, which we can say x plus 4 equals 0 or x minus 4 equals 0. Now, once we have this expression, x, you can subtract 4 from both sides, x equals negative 4. Here you can add 4 to both sides, x equals 4. Then we can do the same for this question. If 64 is if 64 is b square, then b is going to be 8. If x square is a square, then a is going to be x. So we have x plus 8, x minus 8 equals 0. So if x plus 8 equals 0, that means x will be equal to negative 8 because we'll have subtract 8 from both sides. Or if x minus 8 equals 0, so when you add 8 to both sides, you have x equals 8, positive 8. So x equals negative 8 or positive 8. Then this is the last slide we are going to be looking at. So if you are already staying tuned up to this point, I can see you want to be a great mathematician. You can, subscribe, like, and share. Thank you very much. So here, this is the same method as this method, simple trinomial factorization. The only difference is that this is a perfect square, right? Because if you look at this is 9 and this is 6, which if you take two numbers that you can multiply together to get 9 and add together to get 6, that is 3 and 3, right? So that is 3 and 3, which means that you can easily just say x plus 3, x plus 3 equals 0. So in this case, it's either x plus 3 equals 0 or x plus 3 equals 0. So subtract 3 from both sides, so you have x equals negative 3. If you do the same here, you will still get x equals negative 3. So yeah, that's the solution, just one solution, x equals negative 3. And if you take a look at this, you are looking at two numbers that when you add them together, that when you multiply them, you get 25, but when you add them together, you get negative 10. So these numbers in this case is going to be negative 5 and negative 5. If I add negative 5 and negative 5 together, I get negative 10. If I multiply negative 5 and negative 5, I get positive 25. So I can easily say x minus 5 equals 0, or let me write it out in full. X minus 5 equals 0, which means it's either x minus 5 equals 0 or x minus 5 equals 0. So when you add 5 to both sides, you have x equals 5. So that's that. Although there are more complex quadratic equations that we solve using factorization, because it's called completing the square, but completing the square is also a form of factorization. So we solve using completing the square, right? So we are going to take a look at that. So stay tuned for that in the next video. Kindly like, share, subscribe. See you on the next one.